Welcome you in to the Small Ball Podcast alongside Trevor McKinley and Christian Dennis. I'm Scott Ayers. Producer Andy, not here.
That's been a common theme these days.
But to be fair,
Where is he?
We had to record a little early.
We
and
did.
He couldn't make it till 5:15.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fair.
Well, he's gonna pick up the stuff afterwards.
I didn't know
edit.
we had to record early.
Yeah, I sent it in the group chat.
Yeah, he said he has something right at 6.
What do you got
Yeah.
at 6? What's going on, Christian?
Got a friend's game night. She just graduated and just got her second master's. So
Whoa.
yeah.
Whoa.
Why have one when you can have two?
Were you invited?
You know what's weird, Trevor? I wasn't invited. Were you invited?
No, and I feel like we know a lot of the same people.
What is that supposed to mean?
I don't know. I'm just trying to put you on the spot. Just trying to have fun.
Just
Trying to have fun.
Just figured that we would also be invited to the game night. I figured it's like, hey, if one of small balls there, maybe we'll get all of a small ball there.
That's where my mind was at.
Oh, okay.
Aren't we a trio? Like
Yeah,
we're a
it's a
unit.
package deal. It's
So
like,
then Andy's not included?
No. What
You
I
said
mean
a
by
trio.
what I mean by trio. No. What I mean by trio.
Yeah.
See, what I mean by trio is actually 4.
Oh,
That's what I mean.
okay.
it's true. That can't be mistaken.
Hey,
Trio.
On our Spotify, it says, because we revamped it, we have a new logo. Shout out to Miles, who made the logo for us.
Not Garrett.
Miles Garrett. Thank you, Miles. Did a great job. But I updated the logo, and then I also, it said like Scott, Christian, Trevor. I added Andy to it.
Yeah.
that's a good
Scott,
addition.
Christian, Trevor, Andy. He is cemented. But he's not here to receive his award. So.
No. Instead, he just. I mean, he's gonna hear this because he listens to every
He
episode.
does. He does, actually, I think.
He's going to Ohio tomorrow, so he said he was going to listen to it on the plane.
Okay.
See,
I like that.
that's exactly what happened. Yeah. So he'll listen to it on the plane. Shout out Andy and guys. Before we get into our deep dive of the San Antonio Spurs, it's only right. Trevor, you designed. I mean, we've got some merchandise coming out, and you designed kind of a shirt that has been really going viral.
You use that term lightly, Scott.
Yeah.
But we do have a shirt available. Miles designed that shirt. So I sent him screenshots
This
of
kid's
you.
crazy.
I know. He cooked for us.
He's like that.
He is.
Okay.
So he designed a shirt. I sent him some screenshots of Scott playing basketball from our mic'd up video that we put out on Instagram. And we're selling Scott hype tees. You see them for your favorite players. You see them.
Yeah.
I see a ton for Anthony Edwards these days. And I thought, if Anthony Edwards has a T-shirt like this, Scott Ayers needs a T-shirt.
T-shirt, which it only feels right. I think we've sold thousands of them.
Yeah.
And
We sold at least 6. Okay?
Really?
and it's not just small ball who's bought them.
No.
That's
There's
pretty good.
people outside of just us. But they're like for $30, $34, I think.
Great deal.
Go to our Instagram, hit our bio, buy some Scott t-shirts, and let's get the world to wear Scott hype tees.
Wear me.
Yeah. We don't really make much off it, but it's fun.
It's
fun.
all about the bit.
Yeah.
It's a bit.
For this podcast,
We're a bit pod.
we're a bit.
And who knows, maybe we're going to have cool merch coming out soon.
Huh. That would be interesting.
That would be.
Yeah.
I would kill for a sweatshirt.
Yeah, that would be cool if we had a sweatshirt. Or if we had t-shirts that were on comfort color tees.
Yeah, and there's different color options.
What color would you want, Christian?
I don't know. Maybe like a bluish green.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd probably do like a purple one if I could. But anywho. Yeah. Well, guys, let's not talk about merch. Let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs. And we had a lot of people say, why San Antonio? But in all honesty, this team is really interesting. And a big part of that is they have what we believe to be is one of the best players in the NBA. What many believe that. And a guy who could take a step into being a top 5 player in the NBA. I don't think that's crazy at all. So we're going to talk about the Spurs. And it's only best to just talk about first what they did last year, which was going 22-60.
Yeah, we knew going into this season that they weren't going to be very good, but everyone wanted to watch Victor Wembanyama. And he had an amazing rookie year. And yes, they lost a lot of games, but there was also a lot of games where they were in it towards the end of the game, and they just lost because of lack of experience. Like I could think of that. There was this one showdown against the Bucks. Giannis had like 70 that night.
That game was amazing.
But Wemby was also like had like 40 plus. So it was just like an incredible game, and it just shows the trajectory of the Spurs it's in a good spot. I mean, you mentioned one of the top 5 NBA players in the league, and he's only like 20. So it's just the future is so bright for the Spurs. Like we say that a lot about a lot of teams, but like they potentially have one of the greatest players to ever play when his career is over. Like he's just an insane generational type of player.
Yeah, Christian said it. Like there are teams that we say have a bright future. And, you know, there's levels to this. Like the Spurs, if there's S tier teams, you put the Spurs in S tier because of Victor. So for future wise, like they have a bright future. We know that. Going into last season, they weren't expected to win. If you're a Spurs fan, the season went perfectly for you. Number one, the star rookie that you drafted met and even exceeded expectations, and you guys secured a top 4 draft pick. And then they went and they picked Stephon Castle, and that's how you want the season to go. You don't want to be caught in mediocrity. You don't want your rookie to get injured or bust, and it went well for them.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty good when your rookie is second defensive player of the year, wins rookie of the year, averages more than 20 points per game.
Yeah.
You just can't say that for any other team, and so it's layers to it. They're at the top layer. But it's more than just Wemby because they have a lot of just young assets. You think of someone like Devin Vassell, who feels like he's been around for a while, and he's only 23 years old. Keldon Johnson, 24. Jeremy Sohan is 20. Zach Collins feels like he's one of the older guys on the team, and he's 26. And I'm not saying Zach Collins is the end-all, be-all, but that just shows you that this team has crazy youth to it. So now you build on top of the fact that they have a top 5 player in the NBA, and around him are all these guys, to your point, Christian, are just gathering experience where they were in tight games. They won some. They beat Denver late in the year. This team, it really feels like even start of next year, we could see this team make a leap into being a play-in or playoff team.
Yeah, with the additions that they had this offseason, you know, I was going to say, like, there's no way that they make the play-in just because I feel like they would want to be, you know, a lower-seeded team so that they can try to get another player for this draft. But at the same time, like, they could easily, if Victor Wembanyama takes another step to where he's just completely dominant, like the Spurs were kind of tough to beat last year. And if he takes another step, they're going to be even tougher. So it's like, is there a possibility that they sneak into the play-in next year? I think it's very likely. I mean, you have Chris Paul and you have a guy like Harrison Barnes who are good additions. So it's like the West is wonky. As we can tell, like we don't know what's going to happen because we just saw the Dallas Mavericks just go to the finals.
Right.
So it's like anything can happen. Injuries can happen. Teams that we expect to be good end up falling off. It's just wild. It's the wild, wild West. That's literally what it is. But there's a world where they can sneak into the play-in, and then there's a world where they're bottom of the West again. It's just we don't know the full expectations, and we don't know the full, I guess, advantage that the Spurs can have coming into this season with the second year under Wemby.
And on top of that, let's look at their free agency and their offseason that they've had. They didn't really lose anyone. And their big additions, they get Stephon Castle. More importantly, they get Chris Paul, which I know it's an aging Chris Paul, but you want to talk about a veteran presence. There's one. And let me double down and get you another veteran in Harrison Barnes. I'm obviously surrounded by 2 Kings fans. You've experienced Harrison Barnes for, how long was he there? 6 years? 7 years?
Something like that, yeah.
So you know what Harrison Barnes brings to the table, But one thing that I think he will bring in a very positive manner is just veteran leadership that this team severely lacked last season.
Yeah, both of those guys are going to bring in some serious veteran leadership. And I respect Chris Paul. Usually guys, when they get to that stage of their career, legends that are just role players at the end of their career, they're trying to run after championships. And Chris Paul is built different, and he's trying to run after where, I guess, playing time is and opportunity is for him to shine. Yeah. And he saw an opportunity in San Antonio where he's going to be able to potentially unlock another level for one of the greatest players potentially ever in Victor. He in a summer league game was interviewed, and the way that he was talking about how he's excited to learn Victor's tendencies, learn where, like, no one's ever played with a guy like Victor where he could throw the ball at certain locations and he can go get it. Like, I think Chris Paul is the perfect guy to figure out and unlock, like, how good Victor can be, because it's a point guard. He's the ultimate point guard. He's going to find Victor open all the time. Last season, Spurs fans hated watching Sohan be point guard because he wasn't feeding Victor. Chris Paul is coming in, and he will be feeding Victor. That's his role, is get him the ball.
Also, the great thing with Chris Paul is because you just drafted Stephon Castle, who has said he wanted to be a point guard, he is the ultimate mentor for that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you still have Trey Jones on your team, which is like a pretty solid backup point guard.
Yeah.
And so, like, Chris Paul is just going to give them so many wisdoms, like, just throughout.
So many wisdoms.
So many
wisdom.
So much wisdom.
So much wisdom is what I meant to say. But throughout the year, and, you know, like you mentioned, he's going to learn the tendencies of Wemby, and he's going to be able to teach that to Castle and Jones, to where when Chris Paul is done after this year, you know, they're able to continue the growth. I would not be surprised if we ended up seeing, like, Chris Paul, like, on the San Antonio Spurs bench after, you know, like, coaching.
Yeah.
Because he's just going to, like, want to ride it through with
that would be so cool.
Yeah. And it feels really fitting to see that with Popovich as well.
Watch him be Pop's successor. Whoa. Okay. Off the cuff question for Christian. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm just going to, because I'm looking at their roster and they have some young pieces that we like, but odds are some of them are going to fall off. Okay. So I'm going to give you two names of guys that are heading into big years, almost make it or break it. Third seasons in the NBA. I think for City, it's a second. But City Sissoko from G League Ignite comes into his second season last year, didn't really have opportunity. I know that you liked him coming into the season. And then Malachi Branham heading into his third year from Ohio.
Yeah, I think Malachi could kind of crack the rotation, being a bench player for him.
Well, he played a lot last season.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I don't see him, like, starting. So I just think he's going to be a solid role player coming off the bench, a little scoring threat. But I did like CD, but I don't think CD is going to turn into anything. I think he's too much of a project of a player. You know, he's going to be one of those guys where he's like, oh, he's 1 year away of being 1 year away.
Yeah.
You know, it's like his talent is just too raw in my opinion. And so, like, I mean, it could be something, but I just kind of doubt it. It just doesn't seem like the type of player that's going to actually work out.
I have him on my dynasty basketball team, so I was hoping to hear good things. That's not encouraging.
Well, what's interesting too is you mentioned 3-year players, and San Antonio has quite a few of them. There's also Jeremy Sohan. There's Julian Champagnie, who they re-signed last year as, you know, potential role player guard for the Spurs. And you also add in Malachi Branham. So you have a bunch of players who are kind of in this year where there's that hope to see a leap, if you will. So it's not just going to be Wemby. There's a lot of players that, if you're a Spurs fan, you're kind of on the edge of your seat saying, okay, who's this player really going to be? Jeremy Sohan is one. He kind of felt like a darling his rookie year. And last year, he still gave us some buzz, but it wasn't anything where it's like, oh, this is a guy. So he's just another player who I think it's a prove it year, and I think it's a prove it year for quite a few players on this team.
Yeah, for sure. I think when looking at the Spurs, if I was a Spurs fan, I'm looking at the development of Devin Vassell. How well does Stephon Castle play? And then, of course, Wemby. Everyone else, I'm like, they're kind of movable. Sohan, it kind of is on like teetering that line of like, yeah, we'd like to see him develop and be a good player. And then Keldon Johnson is just, to me, he's just a little too boring of a player. Like, he's a good role player, but he's really not going to give you that extra oomph that you kind of need.
Yeah. To kind of switch also to look more at their front office this offseason, they were able to acquire some draft picks. And I'm looking at the picks that they have, even for next season. They have 4 first-round picks. The next season, 2026 offseason, they have 2. And then this offseason, they were able to acquire on draft night. They traded away the rights to Kentucky guard Rob Dillingham. And to Minnesota, they received a unprotected 2031 draft pick. And then from Sacramento, they received, in the Harrison Barnes deal, where they gave up nothing, they received a pick swap just for free for taking on Harrison Barnes' contract. You don't see GMs make deals for picks that are 7 years away. And why the Spurs are able to do that and why it's so awesome is because their GM, he's been there for years and he has job security. You're not going to see a Kings GM, Monte McNair, trade away assets for picks that are, 7 years from now because he doesn't know if he's going to be around. Mm-hmm. But for the Spurs, they have that stability that just sets them apart from other organizations. That's why they've been dominant for so long. The most wins since 2000. I think it's the Spurs. We were looking at charts earlier this week. And they're going to continue to do that. So impressive work this offseason, even just acquiring super late draft picks for honestly not a ton.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like what you bring in terms of job security. You see it even for like Coach Popovich, right? There's that security just from the top to bottom of the organization, and now it's set them up where realistically they don't have to be good this year, right? It can be another developmental year, even though I'm sure fans and players are like, hey, we want to kick things into gear because with those 4 picks, and if you stink this year, well, guess what? There's another player at the top of that list that looks really good in Cooper Flagg. Mm-hmm. And if you have Cooper Flagg times Wemby, that's a crazy duo. But again, if you're a Spurs fan, you're probably like, hey, you know what? I would like to see my team be good because this is a franchise that's been very, very great since 2000.
Yeah, it's definitely been a weird transition for Spurs fans. Growing up, they had that dynasty, and then they've just been kind of pretty bad the last few years. So it's like it's got to be so weird being from like winning to like the lowest of lows.
Right.
Well, even if they don't get Cooper Flagg, there are other players out there. There's a French point guard, Nolan Traore, who could do it all, 6'4". There's Ace Bailey. There's so many guys in next year's draft that, to be honest, I don't think Stephon Castle is a point guard. I think he'll eventually become a shooting guard. He's going to start his career that way. And I think you can go get like a Nolan Traore from France, pair him with Wemby. Like, the Spurs are going to be so good and so fun.
I've always wondered why teams don't do this, where it's like whoever your best player is, like Denver, right? Jokic he's from Serbia. So why don't you just like get every Serbian player and just like make like basically a borderline national team, just like
the best Serbian players.
Like, imagine like the Spurs have like all the best French players in the league.
It'd be awesome.
It'd be so sick.
That would be pretty cool.
I don't know how you would make that work, but
well, it would just have to be like those players, like Bilal in Washington. Like, he's like, Wemby's hitting him up, like, you got to come to San Antonio. We got to build something.
Bilal's like, I'm leaving, or you trade me.
Let's continue what Tony Parker and Boris Diaw built.
Yeah.
Whoa.
A lot of French players play for San Antonio.
It's a pipeline.
Yeah, that would be super cool. I don't know why teams haven't done that. Yeah.
Make your stars happy.
Make them happy.
Make them happy. Okay, well, let's make ourselves happy, and let's talk about the Spurs, what we think they'll do this season.
Okay.
San Antonio, their second worst team in the West, obviously had the 4th pick in this last draft. what do we see the Spurs doing? Do we see this team achieving more than 22 wins, for one? And two, is this team good enough to be a play-in team, overall projections?
I could start for us.
Yeah, please.
You guys mentioned earlier in the show the West is wild, and the West is stacked. You can make the case for 13 of the teams to be great this year and be playoff teams. Last year, was hesitant on buying into the Victor hype because I wanted to be cautious about it because you don't know about durability. But this season, I decided I'm buying the Victor hype.
Yep.
I'm hopping on the train, and I believe that the Spurs are going to be a top 10 team. I think that they're going to make the play-in. We're going to see teams that we wouldn't expect to fall out. Like, that's inevitable in the West. Like, who knows? The Kings go get DeRozan. They may not make it into the play-in this year. Like, that kind of stuff could happen. That's how crazy the West is, and I think San Antonio is going to find themselves at the 10 spot. That's where I have them finishing.
Interesting. I think you.
I'm just. And
Right.
when I mentioned the Kings, I'm not saying that that's where I have them. I have them higher. I have them making the playoffs, but I'm saying that potential is there for Houston.
Right.
For any of these teams. The Grizzlies, they're healthy now. They may not. They might have lost their window.
Yeah. There's two teams when you are looking at the teams that didn't make the play-in that arguably could be in the playoffs and play in above, and that's the Rockets and the Grizzlies. With the Spurs, I feel like they did get better this year, but I don't necessarily think that they'll make the play-in. I think that they'll go from 22 wins and then bring it up to like 30 wins. Because I'm looking at the West, and I think that the Blazers are probably the worst team in the West.
By far.
And then second goes the Utah Jazz. I think the Jazz are going to be worse than the Spurs. And then that's where I have the Spurs at. So kind of the Spurs in the 13th seed of the West, just kind of like definitely see signs of improvement, but I don't think that the jump into the play-in is going to be quite there yet because, Ja Morant's back. The Grizzlies are healthy. They could very well make a big jump. We could see teams like the Warriors dropping out, the Clippers dropping out. The Rockets, I think, are really solid with their core, with their youth, and they have a good coach in Ime that I think that they'll be tougher this year. It's all based on internal improvement, which that can be a hit or miss, but it's kind of like, seeing is believing sort of thing, and those products just seem a little bit more finished than the Spurs right now.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good sentiment. I have San Antonio at the All-Star break. They're going to be hovering the 10 seed. And I think at the All-Star break, they're going to decide, hey, we're going to tank out of this thing or be fighting for a play-in spot. Ultimately, I think they're going to just miss the playoffs. But I could see them winning as many as 35 games. Like, I don't think that's crazy to see them winning 35 games because they just have a player that's so good in Wemby. So I kind of go with the sentiment where, you could even see a team like Dallas or Denver. They're a star player away from getting hurt from not being in the playoffs. Like, imagine if Jokic or Luka missed 50 games or 40 games. Like, they'd be screwed. And that's just like where we're at in the West. Like, if LeBron is out or AD gets hurt, the Lakers are screwed. So I have no idea how the West will shake out because health is such a big factor, the parity, the matchups. But I think the Spurs, I want them to make the playoffs so bad.
Yeah, part of the reason why I have them up there is because of Wemby. Like, I think he's just going to get better, and the league still hasn't – they're not going to figure him out in year two. I don't know if they ever will.
I don't think they will.
So it's just that guy, he could take over a game. Talking about that Bucks game, like it was him versus Giannis going back and forth, and that's a rookie Victor. Like that, this version of Victor that we saw this past season, that's the worst version we're going to see until he starts declining when he's like
30-something, maybe
30-something.
The thing is, like, can this guy decline? Because, like, you can't teach tall. He's 7'5". Like, he's always going to have that advantage.
Yeah. So I think that it's going to be a really good year for him, and which means the Spurs are going to be pretty solid and hard to beat. I'll also say this. We're talking about, like, all these teams and how close it's going to be. I would not be surprised if seeds 1 through 13, like it could be a historically close year
For sure.
for rankings. Like they could be separated by 5 games.
I mean, what was it? This last year, the top 3 teams were separated. Well, 1 and 2 were tied, and Minnesota was a game back.
Yeah, and then like 4 to 10 last year were all super close.
Yeah.
So I think it's even going to be even closer this next season. I just feel like there's so much talent. It's going to be hard for a team to separate themselves from the pack.
I agree. Yeah, the West.
It's going to be fun.
I can't wait for an expansion in the NBA. This is a quick side tangent because then we can move some of these teams from the West and put them in the East. It's a selfish wish, but it sucks.
No, it would be nice as a fan of the Sacramento Kings. Any way we can make it a little easier for us is going to be huge, you know?
You know, people always talk about, at least we have, and I've seen other people say this, but like when you do an expansion, let's say you add Seattle and Vegas, the West only gets rid of 1 team because now there's 16
Oh, you're right.
and 16. Or, 16 and 16. The math is weird. Like you would think, we're adding 2, you add 2.
But you're right. It's 1.
So, if we had to choose one.
Okay, well then we'll give a second. They give us Washington in the West.
Yeah, please give us Washington.
We'll trade Minnesota and OKC.
What team do
New
you
Orleans,
think would move from the West to the East?
New Orleans.
Either New Orleans or Memphis.
Yeah, a lot of people say New Orleans. I don't want to throw Minnesota up there.
Yeah, I would be great.
They're next to Milwaukee. They're next to Chicago. They're next to Indiana. Like they're literally all right there.
Yeah, they can take them.
They should go to the East.
Yeah, Ant.
Yeah,
Pack your bags, Bucko.
All those. No, the Bucks are actually good, and so is Indiana. But the Bulls stink.
The Bulls stink.
What a stinky franchise.
Big year for Giddey, though.
Big year for Mr. Giddey. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on him.
No one's listening to that episode.
Yeah, no chance. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys, on the San Antonio Spurs? Anything we missed? I saw their ticket prices. Well, actually, it's people who bought tickets. Those prices are getting jacked up.
Nice, Scott.
You like that research?
That's journalism, baby.
Yeah.
You went to journalism school.
I did.
Hot take airs.
All I did was read a headline and went, whoa.
Hot take Scott.
Hot take Scott. Look at this.
Do you think it's because of inflation?
No, I think people really like Wemby.
There's got to be both, right?
Vaxxed.
It's because it's an election year.
Yeah, it's an election year. Like, we got it. This might be the last time we can ever watch sports before we're all enlisted in our civil war.
Also, I'll just say this. Thinking about like the team makeup, they have some bigger contracts. They also have set themselves up to potentially, with all the picks I mentioned and some of the contracts they have, they can go trade for a LaMelo Ball. They can go trade for a Trae Young if either of those guys becomes available.
Jamal Murray.
So they're a team
Jamal Murray.
They're a team to keep your eye on come trade deadline if they want to make a push.
Yeah.
Buckle up, Spurs fans.
It's getting nasty.
The rodeo's starting.
Yeah.
That's nice. Buckle your seatbelts, buckaroos. All right, well, guys, that was a great deep dive. We will, maybe next week we'll do another deep dive. Who knows?
Yeah, we're going to keep the team a secret.
Oh,
It's a good one.
Little mystery. Little mystery with it. Ooh, more to come here on Small Ball. For Trevor Meekin and Christian Davis, I'm Scott saying so long for now. We will see you next week.
Remember the Alamo.